Paphlëis by Felix Mendelssohn. What? Is it your wish to defeat us? Have no fear, Fritz, it shan't happen. Easily defeat you we can, as there are lots among us, but with Ede, being a dweller of cellars, and proud, and you alone had an answer, light-footed Paphlëis. Certainly you have very many, and I only a few fighters, but a fighter Ede is. Also I a great runner, and we are worth 6 of your coward soldiers. Also expect auxiliary troops, we have 3 sturdy boys. He had hardly this to say, when they came hastily with their steps. 2 Kasparis arrived, named Louis and Wilhelm, armed fully, and at the same time the excellent Pinne was sent from the Friedlander's house to help Paphlëis. The brave general happily and mockingly called his words. Bring at once chains to bind many of the prisoners. Those in the battle shall not escape. Fesca heard this, swung full of rage his lance, showing his greenish teeth. With his many hideous faces, terror seized all of the soldiers of Paphlëis. They would have fled had Aphrodite, the love goddess, had not noticed, passing through the rows, encouraging Paphlëis and his warriors by calling their fathers' names, and so she raised up the courage of the terrified Paphlëician warriors. But how the flash of the storm clouds shoot, or a fierce lion falls upon trembling prey, anger in his eyes and also fury, Fesca so then rushed to the attack, ran to Paphlëis, roaring enormously. But the brave Paphlëis, O Muse, speak it to posterity. Fama, tell the grandchildren of grandchildren. Brave Paphlëis turned his tail and shouted to his true comrades, Flee, oh so flee, you boys, otherwise the Fesca will get you all. So cried to the army, he ran away at the utmost haste. Went to the yellow house he finally came. But when he now was in fear, though safe behind the courtyard door, he sank within powerlessness, for terror took his senses. In the clay he fell, liquid from the rain, and his face and his clothes and hair were splashed by the soup. But the soldiers listened not the words of the general. Then he ordered to flee, and yet they remained courageous. Name me, Muse, now those there in the fight who fought. But first the warriors of brave Fesca were led. Firstly came Adami thither, full of defiant boldness, which in Rennstein he lived, an unappetizing rascal. Then also came Fritz Beselt, not worth the slightest mention. Also 2 Teichels came thither with handsome faces, but with bad attitudes, and lastly the clumsy Newman. Name me, Muse, now those the brave Paphlëis had left. 2 Kasparis fought there, the sons of the dyers, then also Ede, the treasure, and Pinne of peaceful lands. At the soldiers, more lances and spears fired, and Fritz Beselt, also from the curly Pinne, was wounded, ran them against each other in raging hand-to-hand combat, tearing and biting, and pushing and scratching and kicking, until finally Paphlëis' party roared at the fiend warriors, frightening them. Teichel firstly ran away, following him Adami and Newman, pushing by trees and rails, and sprung over the posts. All ran and fled as the Paphlëician soldiers pursued. But Ede on the toe of Fesca stepped, which was an enormous mountain with chicken eyes, was marked. Limping could he only do, then gripped him, Kaspari, by the scruff. Strong with the fist, him he gripped. Now cried he, I have the Fesca, come you comrades, and help, otherwise he, from me, will escape. All now came here, and let run the fiends. Pinnechin grabbed him by the skirt, Kaspari by the scruff, his brother by the dirty boots, and Ede tugged at the legs. When they finally brought him to the house of the brave Paphlëis, they dragged him across the courtyard into the dark cellar prison, binded him up, locked the door, and pulled the keys. But he howled much and raged. Grim spirit, quickly now left the warriors of Paphlëis, of the dull cellar, went so then into the courtyard for brave Paphlëis to seek. But they found him laying in clay in dull stupor, picked him up and carried him quickly under the pump, pulled on the handle with might, and cleaned him of the clay. But he woke not. Then spoke the brave Ede, "Hear, great-grandchild of Mendel, you grandson of the excellent Mendelssohn, the son which the name Bartholdi was given. My general, wake up. We have already the fiends expelled and the Fesca captured. He sits there, down in the cellar." He spoke, then woke the Paphlëis from the long-slept faint. Calling immediately to the soldiers, he wanted them all to assemble, and they assembled and circled around the brave general. As they now were assembled, then spoke also the authoritarian, "Hear my word, O you warriors, the word of the brave general. God give thanks, I have now the fiends chased away. Had I not given you help, never would you had them conquered. But they are now defeated. By my mighty strength, shout out loud Victoria, so that the house comes into alarm." Spoke he, and cried all the comrades Victoria out loud, thanking now humbly to Paphel for brave support. Turning then to go, for high stood the sun within the sky, and disperse they did. Soon with each to their own home went every one. Chapter 2. Mercury. Paphlëis calls together the comrades. They pretend to be indignant. Paphlëis tells of his life and his deeds. He washes himself. The assembly goes to disperse. Helios rose up into the sky. Sweating are the people. See there the glistening hero out of his chambers with the garments clothing him, a sharp sword over the shoulder, under his fragrant feet the bright gold soles, and, as Fanny found it, with a face resembling Apollo's, quickly went to the cellar he did, where Ede lived, calling out to him, and called also the brave Wilhelm, Benneken's son, with a graceful face. When they both came, hero Paphel commanded Ede to fetch Pin from the street of the Rosy Valley, with haste. Fast went Ede thither. Soon came now the curly Pinne. All went into the courtyard of the grumpy general, standing around him and waiting for his orders. But spoke now Paphlëis, began he, and said, "Brave men, here in the courtyard we now gather. Let us play a game, in order to banish the boredom." All cheered now, and were happy about the order. "But what will we play?" so questioned the cautious Pinne. "Paphlëis shall decide, for he knows fun games." But said Paphel, full of loving kindness, "What do you want? To me it is all the same. I am very pleased. Say now, what pleases you? For your will is mine." Out loud called Ede now, flying his words, "Let us play attack. Who wants, raise their hand high." All raised their hand, but spoke the gracious Paphel, "Play not only attack, the game is to me completely repugnant. Let us play Zek, then. Who wants, raise their hand high." Spoke thoughtfully the almighty Pinne. All raised their hand, but spoke the pleasant Paphel, "No, not Zek only. We run so much, making it so tiring. Clumsack we will play then. Who wants, raise their hand high." Spoke Wilhelm now, Benneken's son, full of laughing grace. All raised their hand, but spoke the pleasant Paphel, "Clumsack not, because I can't suffer the hitting and pushing." Suddenly they grumbled about it, and pushed each other about, casting furious glances at the hero, and murmured angrily, "Ja, that he calls pleasing," so spoke full of malice the Ede. "Pooh, hero Paphel," began unwillingly the curly Pinne. "Why have I come here?" spoke angrily the Wilhelm. "Say, pleasing hero, what do you want to play?" spoke in unison the boys, all together. And after a long silence, now spoke hero Paphlëis slowly, "Ja, I know very well, only I cannot express." But they urged him as he wanted to control the game. "Marbles, let us play." So spoke hero Paphel with empathy. Suddenly they grumbled about it and shot angry glances. "Ja, he plays it best, out of all the Berliner boys, because he has practiced from morning to the evening last spring. So spoke the men, while pushing each other, but raised hero Paphlëis his hand, and he calmed the riot. Wilhelm, give me marbles. Mine I have lost. 10 for a dryer. Ja, cakes, replied Wilhelm. Pin, you give me some. You will get 4 pfennig for 10, spoke hero Paphlëis now. Ja, coins, answered Pinne. Edichin, you'll give me 10 marbles for 5 pfennig. Soup, answered Edde, then fetched for himself the marbles, giving for 10 6 pfennig, so how Frau Bornen had asked. Edichin made the circle by turning on his heel. Then he took the hem of his coat and struck it in the circle, that he, the stones and dirt would expel. But Pinne and Wilhelm leveled in haste the path, inwardly bending their feet. Paphlëis determined the meal with his pickaxe, scratching in the sand. All of them now pulled out from the bag leather pouches, pouring the marbles out, and wanted the game to begin. But Fry Patterin is valid, spoke Pin. Fry Patterin is valid not, shouted Paphlëis. It should still be valid, called the others. 9, not valid. Is not valid. It's valid still. And hero Paphlëis spoke. Carbonet Diza, boys. What is then exactly Fry Pattern? I know not what it means. Suddenly they grumbled about it, and spoke to one another. See, he quarrels just to quarrel. He knows not the corpus delicti, but he fights still. Pooh, Paphlëis, shouted them all. Quiet, spoke Paphlëis. We play, and the Fry Pattern is valid not. Want that not? So you shall still feel my power. Silently they obeyed. Firstly pushed Edde the marble, then hero Paphlëis, and Pin, and lastly the laughing Wilhelm. Pinne won first 3 marbles, and Edward won. But in the second party, won hero Paphlëis them all, and he won in the 3rd, and 4th, and 5th, and 6th. But in the 7th they were divided, which one of them was next. Wilhelm said, I am, and Edde, I am, and Pinne, I am. But Paphlëis, I am alone, you cheaters. Hardly had he this to say, so rushed them upon the general, beating him valiantly, and threw him then on the earth, pulled him also by the hair, and dragged him along by his feet. At last they let go, for he screamed as a furious ox. But hardly was he free, when he sprung high and said, Quiet, I command, I am next. Dust my coat off. And they obeyed silently, and cleaned him of the dirt. But Paphlëis spoke. Herr Moller shall decide who out of all us is next. Only go and fetch him for me. Moller had thoughtfully leaned in the corner of the courtyard door, smoking a pipe of tobacco, and saw cautiously the game. He, the smiling one, Edde, now fetched, so that the dispute could be decided. And he came to the circle and measured all the distances, first with the edge of his brownish coat, and then with his finger, with his torn boot as well, and then with his stick. But as he 4 times measured, spoke he with questionable sense, I know not, my soul. Then winked at him secretly, Paphlëis, blinking to him, and shuffled with his feet, and cleared his throat strongly at him. Moller scratched his head, and behind the ears, and said, Gloob, it is Herr Paphlëis. Then grumbled loudly them all, but pushed Paphlëis the marble into the circle. Wilhelm was now quitting, and Pinne had now only 1 single. So they refused any longer to play marbles, taking their hats to leave. But said Paphlëis, Stay here, oh you boys. We want to tell each other something. Ja, tell, rang out of everyone's mouths. All them put their hats away, and sat quickly under the flower window, by Dachshunds over on the lawn. Who will tell us something? Spoke Paphlëis. Pinnechin said, I don't know. And Edde, I know not. But Wilhelm, ja, I know a story. but I cannot tell you. So try. I cannot. Try, said the others. But spoke hero Paphel. I know his stories. They are mystical and also philosophical. I don't like that stuff. I want to tell you something. You shall hear miracles. My life story will have you interested. All asked him now, as they would like him to tell, and cleared his throat, and began then as follows. Hear my urgent call, you muses of the mountains, and the sources. Come drive in me unto, that I may feel inspired. Hear my word, you boys, and take it as example to you. First will I now tell you how I experienced all. When you don't know the names of the languages that I'm talking about, or the arts that I learned, so does it no harm, for I know probably many of the names you don't know. Firstly, I know Latin perfectly. I read Phaedrus, and that is really the hardest of all Latin poets. Secondly, I know also Greek. I read the classical Iacobs. 1,001 Nights I have of Arabic read. Syrian, Chaldean, Sanskrit. These are to me all only jokes. Aristocratic mathematics, geometric calculations, I have magnificently learned, and know it now wholly from the ground up. Also, it is known I am a great scholar. When in the midday hour you pass here in front of the house, you have certainly often heard a strong growling sound. How when a lion growls on the wooded ridges of the mountains. But that is no lion, that is the violoncello that I, with a mighty hand, sometimes play. It growls, that is, but it sounds otherwise good. I play etudes of quick-rack, difficult things. Alas, that is to me all pomade. I also use the sepia, pen, and pencil. Drawings made by me will appear at the art exhibition. Also, it is known I am a divine artist. Also, I am both an artist and also a scholar. And now will you know with which man you are dealing. Hear now all the honors that I, through knowledge, acquired. Firstly, I am really chief secret court calefactor. Then I am Herr Banker. I make the biggest deals. Then I am lastly, by you, show-off of the games and mistakes. Also 2 medals are owned by I. They came from the Emperor of Russia, one of the golden hair and one of the silver sloth. Now I will tell you the affairs of every day. Early at 5 I wake, and sit up in bed to see if Felix is already awake from his sleep. If he is not, so straightway I order him to be sprayed with water, and the blankets also, the warming ones, quickly to be removed. If he wants not to get up, so call I encouraging words, and then he wakes, and gets dressed, as quickly as possible. But I stay in the bed until Herr Hase has me woken, because why should I so early get up? The sleep is healthy for me. Now must you know also, I have a lovely voice. Therefore sing I, as soon as Herr Hase with calling wakes me, immediately a morning song from my own composition, with 15 keys predetermined, and A comes often within. But it is difficult to pause, so beats for me Herr Hase the tempo often. And then I get up, and have Latin lesson hour. Trifle. At 8 o'clock comes now Caesar, then gives me an hour in calligraphy. Caesar, murmured Pinne. I think he teaches calligraphy. 9 o'clock I take breakfast, one with proper anointing ox. A little Latin and learning including a lot of Greek. But at 10, baked apple wreaths send I to the oven. Calculate afterwards with Vater, that cost me many headaches. But at 11 o'clock play I the cello with a mighty bow, and then it gives sometimes frightening cat music. Mademoiselle Beneke plays the piano, Flix scratches the violin, and I play the cello. But often comes along a fourth, standing in the courtyard, and plays the guitar and the pipe. All the neighbors now stop, but stop we do not. that we don't give a jota for our rights. For 11:30 to 1, since I am private, but at 1 o'clock learn I history and geography, also German language, politics and Greek mythology. But at 2 I work on French, and when that is done, look out the window, I will, to learn of the human nature. Lastly comes now eating. I eat until I am completely satisfied, and at 4 o'clock I go up to study Strunzen. I am a master of art. Depict I want to you all from my life. As soon as I now get Schlicker and Masse, that is the composition of tears and moonlight, but the Schlicker, that is... We don't want to know about Schlicker and Masse, so said the boys. Tell only further. Then at 5 o'clock I learn French language from Vater. Ach, French, said Ed. Oh, speak just a little, for never have I heard it spoken. In the end I'll understand. Il n'a paint incomprehensible, la il lève cruel, spoke the learned Paphlëis, and amazement gripped the companions. Nobody understood the puzzling words' deep dark meaning. Editern had not yet thought. Then occurred it to Pin. He has not yet thought of it, yet it already occurs to him. Shouted he loudly to the boys, and laughed as a goblin. Paphel ordered him to be quiet, and continued now to tell. Then at 6 o'clock I eat braised apples with sugar, smartly taking from the corner, to not destroy the wreath. And then I see how Vater with Felix plays chess. Say to Felix as soon as his pawn stands in check, and notice immediately which of the two have won. Lastly I lay myself onto the sofa, and fall into slumber. Tirelessly I sleep for 11 hours. Rest in peace from the toils that I during the day endured. I am now put in bed, so overthink I do on much. Strong the soul of mine is very, though philosophical, thinking. Thither comes it, that I have an enormous soul, full of power and might. She controls the weak body. Then in all abstentions I am the strongest of men. Murmured the boys. Then say to us an example. 2 for 1, spoke Paphel. I am sensitive to pain, by nature, and all medicine is completely hated by me. But the soul, it forces me in the mornings to take a powder, and calmly move the cup and drink half of it. Of course, it is to me repugnant. Amalie must persuade, but in the end remains the victory, the enormous soul. That is one. To the second, so have I myself completely weaned from saying ow and way. Amalie can so pull, as she only wants, but I don't let out a single ow. All pain I endure lightly, and complain I do not. Therefore I am the strongest. There arose a horrible rumbling, and the flower window collapsed with a clatter. A more terrible noise arose, and boards and shards and carnations, also stalks and roses and moistened earth fell quickly upon them. His mouth filled with leaves, then fell sand into the eyes. But laugh they all did, except Paphel. He wept and cried, Ow! Help me, poor pain! I am dying, surely. I have a plank on my nose. Anxiously they pulled him quickly out, and looked in haste if he was wounded, but found them not the slightest injury. At this they became very angry, and spoke furious minds. Woe to you, Paphel! You are the most cowardly of earth-dwellers. What? You want to tell us of heroic deeds, and you yourself are a weaker wretch, and weep when others only laugh. Ow and way, cries you, and say you mock the pain. Truly we notice it well. Fiction you have told us. Pooh! That is not nice. Farewell, you boastful Paphlëis. Look for other boys, that will believe your tales. And they left the courtyard, and slammed violently the door. Paphlëis was now alone, and spoke. Puh! That is disgusting. But I will comfort myself. They must still obey me. Spoke this, and left the courtyard, then climbed up the stairs, hastily stepping. for he had already been called to dinner. Chapter 3. Bellona. Helios divided down, and shadier became the paths. But he was. Hero Paphel now went to the Casparians, to Casparis, the last people, the doubly distributed in the Kornstrasse and in the Schönhausener district, to receive hecatombs of marbles and indigo there. Here now amuses he himself in the garden, but the others, Neumann, Tychels, and Beselt et Cateria, were gathered in the greyish house of the race's dweller, Adami. But spoke Adami now to the boys, and said, for he thought in his mind of poor imprisoned Fesca, whom Caspari imprisoned in the raging tumult of battle. Remembering him, spoke he to the gathered boys, marvel, how very us men by the gods are always cheated. Truly man thinks, but God's guide is a magnificent proverb. See, we thought certainly of crowning friend Fesca with laurels, and now languishes he down in the gloomy cellar prison, suffers greatly pain and atonement for everything. Him you answered, blue-eyed Tychel, with empathy. Our ruler Adami, the Fesca lies in the cellar, truly without one's own fault. We will help him, if possible. If not, his life with ours we will purchase. Lightly said, but difficultly done, spoke King Adami. Let me think a little, how we can better free him. One could certainly, but no. So it will work not. One could at night. It's dark, locked, but opened easily. I have it. Say now, will you follow me to quickly rescue Fesca? For I have just found a splendid means. Lead us, called them all. We burn with holy fire. Up, to free him at once, and let us swear to the alliance with the most holy oath. But spoke the mighty Adami, no oath. He remembered the passages of Julius Caesar, and he wanted not so to completely swear to fleeing. Therefore swore they didn't, but took them poles and lances, hammer and drill together, and a mighty lever. King Adami strode now forward, raising rightly, proudly brandishing the scepter. Following him were all the others, and so went the procession, now left from the greyish house. Night it was. Nyctus's wings covered like lead on the earth. They moved with quieter steps to the house of Paphlëis. Calm were the alleys. They glowed, the dim lanterns, and now rarely heard them the steps of walking people. But they reached the door, where unfortunately Moller left, crept gently in, and reached soon the courtyard. Everyone's body shuddered from fear and from cold. But spoke Adami, where is the cellar prison? No one knew completely. Then ordered Adami, for silence, to listen, if they perhaps hear a sigh. And quickly they fell silent, and heard pitiful groans. And they went to him and found the window of the dungeon, but it was covered with sturdy wooden shutters. They now seized the hammer and wanted quickly to smash it, but very fixed was the window, and withstood all the blows. Therefore took them the lever immediately, and lifted forcefully. All of them fastened to the tree, and pulled so much as they could. Partly behind, Adami began to call, and suddenly sprang with a tremendous bang. The enormous wooden shutters lifted, and quickly sank them over one another on the ground. But 3 cats had cleverly settled in the hole. They rushed out, and sprang towards the boys, scratching and biting them much, making their faces bleed. Quickly screamed and jumped they did, and grabbed stones to throw at the cats, but all of them had fled. Fresh, get to work again, called Tychel. They went into the hole, but finding the window blocked with straw and with manure, and they wore it away, and threw all the stones against the window with might. It broke the dirty panes along with the wood. They lit quickly a lantern, taking therefore a rope ladder, and climbed down into the cellar. Fesca, called them loud. Fesca answered the echo. Deadly quiet was the cellar, while glowed dim the lantern. then in the limbs felt them a creeping fever. Feska called them again, and listened. All was still, only the whistles of mice and a crackling sound. They shuddered. Goosebumps came upon them now. "So let us search for him," spoke Adami, "for here in the cellar groans the voice." Quickly now they started and searched, first in the barrels, then in the tubs and buckets, and finally even in the bottles. But they found him not, and stood in sadly sense. But suddenly they heard in the corner a quiet rumbling. Quickly rushed them over, for stood the mighty roll. With heavy stones were weighing, they searched under, finding him not, and searched lastly also under the stones. A boot they caught there. They pulled forcefully, and they found the calves, the legs, and finally the whole Feska. For fear of the noise, hid in the roll, and they lifted him up, and brought him quickly out of the cellar, into the courtyard, and Adami handed him the golden scepter. "Shameful Paphlëis," spoke he, "I will truly remember you, for you took me prisoner, your back shall pay for it. Heartfelt thanks, you men, for you have bravely freed me. Follow me then, I shall take on the Paphlëis, terrible revenge." And they followed him quickly. He went to the treasure cellar, called out Rike, the sister of the mighty Ede, gave her a 6 coin, and asked her to fetch Paphlëis from the Kasparichin house. She did that in hasty steps. But the Feska led the army to the Grayish house, and hid them there, to lie in wait for the brave Paphlëis. Rike came to Kaspari's, and went in the spacious courtyard, to stick in the half-open door her head, and said, "Paphlëis, you should come home." And Paphlëis listened, taking his hat and his coat, gave farewells, and went now back home. Calm, carefree, sang he a piece that Celts had taught, and for fun, frightened on the street the smaller boys. And so he carried soon at the door of the Grayish house. But hardly had he come thither, so sprung them out with force. Feska, Adami, and Tychels, and Newman rushed upon Paphlëis, threw him down on the earth, although he bellowed as an ox, beat him and kicked and pulled him mercilessly. Ach, the stronger he cried, the stronger they needed Paphlëis, until he finally exhausted and sank into a faint from the blows. But they stopped not with hitting and kicking and pulling. Suddenly thundered someone, "Halt, you rascals!" They looked frightenedly fast around them, and spotted 2 police officers. One gripped the Feska, and the other grabbed Adami. Also the others they wanted to find, but all of them fled. Therefore they dragged Adami and Feska only in the guardhouse, and there remained them, sitting that night and cried terribly. But Paphlëis lay on the battlefield without consciousness. Saw and found him 2 companions, Ede and Wilhelm, for from the parents they were sent to see where Paphlëis remained. Crying much, bandaged him quickly, and stopped the bleeding also. Carried him there to the Nieuwen Promenade, number 7, rang the bell to Carl opening, carried him into the room, and the parents were shocked. But soon came the consciousness of Paphlëis in return, and angered very was the father, and gave him 2 ear slaps, and spoke full of rage the following words, "Off to bed, O Paphlëis! You are a shameful boy. Why do you not listen? I have to you often already said that for you badly will go things. I forbid you ever to fight with the boys, otherwise I will punish you harsher. Now off, to bed with the brat." Mother said nothing, but she remorsed Paphlëis in silence. Fanny said, "It serves him right. Why is he so cowardly?" Bexchen said, "You warrior, crawl in haste into bed." Felix blubbered something, but none could understand it. Ede and Wilhelm carried now forth the brave general, laid him in bed, and stuffed snug the hero in, took Felix's coat away, and all the clothes that hung on the door, and laid them on Paul's bed, that in the night he sweats, and from the bruises recovers. And so they buried the body of the hero in bed. Ende.